Hey everybody. Raids have been introduced into the contest, and so I wanted to make a little video sharing my thoughts about it. I am participating in raids in both SSX and 4Loki. Been talking to a lot of people, hearing feedback as both an officer and a alliance member, and I wanted to make a little video sharing with you what I'm seeing, because I'm not a fan of raids as it's been released. I was excited, a game mode where you get to play with your friends, right? Like playing with my friends is why I play MCOC. And so raids, like it is in other games, seemed like a super, super fun idea and concept. But in between the concept and the actual implementation, there were just a lot of things that were missed. And so I want to talk about some of them in this video. And hopefully over time this gets improved, because I don't know, man, not good. Not good. All right, so let's start off with the champion pool. Back when we were testing out raids in the Battleground Brawl in October of last year in Vancouver, one of the things that a lot of people who played it noticed was that the damage over time champs were totally broken in this game mode, because the damage over time scaled along with the champions from the interactions, right? And so those DOT champs were just broken. And Kabam saw that. They wanted to ease that up, and they nerfed it. And they basically said, hey, look, DOT is not going to scale. The problem is that they left a bunch of champs in the champ pool that were pure DOT based. And when those champs were designed, if you talk to any of the champion designers from Kabam, if they're going to have a heavy DOT champ, they're not going to have it be a strong base pool attack, right? Because basically you want champs to get their damage in some way, and if they're going to be DOT, then generally speaking, they're not as hard hitting without it, right? So leaving those champs in when they're not going to be doing much damage, it makes them feel like total misses. If you went into this mode bringing Dr. Voodoo, for heaven's sake, you're screwed. Not only is he a DOT champ, but he's poison damage over time, right? And 2 of the 4 bosses are poison immune. How are you possibly going to use Voodoo against Maestro or against Ultron? I mean, that just makes no sense. So clearly what happened is that Kabam had this pool of champs. They saw the DOT was broken. They fixed that portion of it, but they never went back and reconsidered changing the pool. And that was just, not great. Not great, right? The other problem with the pool is that there's a lot of energy-based champs, and they got an Ultron boss with that's awakened. And if no one's unfamiliar with Ultron's Sig ability, he's going to heal back energy-based damage, right? So you can't bring energy-based champs really against that Ultron and expect to do a lot of work. It's just not great. All right, the second problem is this 10% damage cap in terms of game economy, right? We hear a lot about game economy from Kabam and their employees, and the game economy for raids is such that, okay, you're going to get a 10% max damage per run, and then the fight's over and you can't really do more than 10%, right? And you're going to get 15 free shots a week, your initial life, and then 2 revives a day for 7 days. That's total of 14, thus 15 shots. The problem is that you and your teammates are not going to get through these 3 bosses in 15 rounds. It's just not happening, because you're not going to be fully ramped for a couple rounds to do the max damage, right? And so you go through, like on day 1 against this first champ, you go through and you're maybe not max ramped until your 3rd fight. That's when you're doing 10%. But the champ is still going to be somewhere in the 90s, high 80s at that point, and you've got to use extra revives there in order to get through it. And you're not really going to be able to get through these 4 fights using those 15 revives. You're going to have to use revives from elsewhere. And Kabam priced the 60% revives at 200 units per, which is outrageous. Don't do that. I'm going to tell you all the same thing I told the guys in 4Loki and SSX. Use the free AQ revives that we get every week, those 1350 ones, right? And then if you have to use units, go and buy the big AQ revives at 45 units per. And that'll get you up to around 60% for 90 units, as opposed to spending the 200 units for just the revive itself. I mean, obviously, it would be better if you could use the free revives and then the potions out of the glory store, but you're really only conceivably able to do that once a day without dipping into your stash, because you can only buy 2 potions a day from the glory store. So the game economy is that great. They're really pushing us to use units in this mode. A lot of guys have felt like they had to use units in this mode, and that's pretty dispiriting. It's just pretty dispiriting. Next point, third, is raids represents Kabam backtracking a lot of the promises they made the player base as they altered Alliance Quest over the last year or two, right? For example, they got rid of link nodes in Alliance Quest because they realized that was a real pain point for a lot of people, okay? And what they've done is Backdoor reintroduce link nodes through this sequencing, Vanguard Tactician Assault, right? The nodes aren't linked, but they're kind of linked, right? Because you have to go in the order in order to build up the charges in order to get the damage so you can hit the damage cap. And so in all of my alliances, we have new chats now for these groups of 3, so that way guys can coordinate, right, when it's their turn to go, so that way you can go in order. Ideally, you try to find a time where everybody's available for 30, 45 minutes so we can just go in order real quick, and that's our day's run at the raid bosses. It just doesn't feel great, right? You get rid of link nodes because they're a pain in the butt. You reintroduce them this way through the back door. It's the same thing when they moved AQ from 5 days to 4 days, right? They said 5 days of AQ is too much for a lot of people. We're going to go to 4 days. Well, here's a 7-day version of it, right? And yeah, it's only once a month, but everybody feels like, okay, if I don't want to spend needlessly, I'm going to have to do this for the full 7 days in order to get those free revives. The other point is they said, let's make map 8 free, right? These tickets. Let's stop charging for AQ. Instead, now they're charging for raids, right? We're actually paying to play this broken game mode. Doesn't feel great. I mean, if not for their glory bug where everybody got like 50,000 extra glory points this week, and I used mine to buy tickets for future weeks, it just would feel real bad spending my money playing a mode that is this undeveloped. And finally, some of these node interactions with the defenders are just too strong, right? The first one is obviously Maestro's degen on the special one. If you don't fully dex that special one, if you get hit by any of it, you're going to degen, you're going to die, right? Here in this fight, I'm using Crossbones. Crossbones can only shrug that degen. I misdexed one of Maestro's special ones in this video. Fortunately, I was able to shrug that degen before it killed me. But in SSX, I was using Red Hulk. He's not able to shrug it, and he died if I missed. And that just feels bad, right? You've let down your teammates. Maybe you don't get full charges, all because of one mistake. For a game mode like Raids, where there's such a small margin of error with the revives, and really pushing, to the point where you have to use units and other resources to complete the content, the fact that one mistake can cost you a fight doesn't feel great, right? Doesn't feel great. The other component is obviously these Pierce charges that everybody's talking about, because, in some of these fights, the Pierce charges just make it totally unmanageable. If you're fighting Maestro with the Pierce and you've got to punish a heavy, well, you're not going to be able to punish a heavy because you can't bait a heavy really by blocking. You've got to only, punish the specials. And, you might be tempted to say, well, Fernandez, get good, clown, right? If you're completing your missions, he's not going to gain the pierces. But again, against Maestro, that's not really feasible, because there's going to be time between when he throws a special and you can punish that special. He may not throw a heavy. That's AI dependent. And so the ability to prevent him from gaining those pierces is really impossible. Then you've got the Thanos fight, which requires you to block in order to complete missions. And if he gets a pierce, right, or a couple pierces, you can't block anymore. And so you're just kind of frozen. No more missions, no more blocking. Let's just see if I can survive for 3 minutes. So, man, Raids has a lot of promise. But this version of Raids, the one that they shipped live, is not good. It's not good. And I really hope Kabam improves it. because at least for folks who play at the upper tiers, this is obligatory content if you want to remain competitive, and so you're kind of forced to do things that maybe you don't want to do, right? Like, I don't really hear in comments about, oh, if you don't like it, don't do it, right? This isn't incursions, which I don't like and therefore don't do. That net doesn't ever set me back, but this actually affects all 30 members of an alliance. And so it is sort of obligatory content unless you go to an alliance that really doesn't give a shit. And unfortunately, that is not really where I want to play this game. I want to care. I want to do the game modes. I want to face challenging content. But I also want to feel like there's a balance, that there's fairness between the difficulty and the content and my ability to overcome it. And here, between the design, the structure, and the economy, in all the ways that I've talked about, I really don't think it's very fair. Anyway, thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you in the next Life Jack.